Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hero News. Kia ora koutou, Chewie.
Hello. I don't know what we're going to talk about tonight, man.
Well, I actually was thinking about that. I thought that the biggest news story of the day, as per one of my tweets earlier this afternoon, was, and I made it very clear that I was very impressed with the big news story of the day, which was breaking news. It was a fine summery day in Dunedin. Is that the biggest news story of the day, as far as you know?
It's pretty good, and I just want to comment. Look at that little square of deck there. That looks very nice.
Yeah, not mine.
The deck that you were doing? No, that's not your deck. Okay,
not mine. I wasn't.
Someone else's deck. Okay,
someone else's deck. I like playing with other people's decks. Chewie, you should know that by now. Yes. What shall we talk about? Well, to be honest with you, we are talking about the retirement of, you could say, New Zealand's most successful Prime Minister. I know that's not what a lot of Twitter's saying at the moment, but certainly the only Prime Minister.
My Twitter is
the only Prime Minister to get a majority government under MMP. So there's a historical aspect to this term. And I don't know how you got it, Chewie, but I was in a very important family meeting today, and talking about like official meeting, not just talking to the kids. And my phone started going brrup, brrup, brrup. And very, very quickly, I needed to figure out how I could stay engaged with the meeting I was in and start emailing the Prime Minister's office and start emailing contributors to potentially come on. And when I came out of that meeting, probably an hour and a half later, we had a show set up. So here we are.
Yeah, my phone went absolutely ballistic. Thanks to those of you in the chat right now that just blew up my phone. I think the first message was in a minute and a half of the press release. So well done, you. I forget who it was. It might have been Jonty. It might have been Cookie. But yeah, absolutely blew up my phone while I was talking to a customer. And yeah, I mean, my initial reaction was just shock. You know what it was?
I think it was shock followed by, oh, that makes sense. You know what I mean? It was like, yeah, I can see that.
Oh, I don't blame her. Like, absolutely not. Like, has there been a Prime Minister in, say, God, my lifetime that has dealt with what she's had on her plate the entire time? Well, I think it'd be a pretty short list of people that have dealt with the shittier aspects of social media, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's been no prime ministers really that have dealt with shitty aspects of social media, because it's only been around for about 12, 15 years. I mean, John Key was here, fair enough, but certainly not Helen Clark or before had that been an active element of someone's political career. John Key, yes, but probably really no one else. And look, I don't care how you spin it. I don't care your political bias. I don't care about your personal indifference to the current and still Prime Minister. You kind of can't argue if you include things like mosque shootings, White Island, global pandemic, All Blacks not winning the Rugby World Cup. No, that's probably not up there. I mean, yes, John Key had the earthquakes, but bang, 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 include into that having a baby, there's probably never been a term like this for what happened, but also I think because of COVID, also never been an outcome like the last one that would impact. This is it, right? The outcome from the last election because of COVID, and the outcome from this election may very well be because of the response to COVID. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's one thing to deal with the fallout of all of this sort of not the fallout, the instantaneous nature of all of these sort of things. You know, the mosque shooting happens, you have to come up with a response. You know, same with the pandemic, but it's also like it's everything that flows out from after that. You know, it's very easy to go on and make the right noises and all of that sort of thing. But then how do you go, what is the next step? A lot of these things that have happened in Ardern's tenure have very, very long-term effects for the country. And yeah, I mean, I get that the general public has a short memory. I get that the general public starts to look at the other guys if someone's been at the wheel for a long period of time. But I mean, my mind is always like, well, you've got to judge people on what they've said. And if you look at, like, if National were at the wheel during the pandemic, especially,
well, that was,
you know, I don't think we'd be in as good a shape as we are. And let's
talk about that.
Bang my head against the wall.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Do not realize this.
Because the pushback from people seems to be, you know, wow, look, all the numbers are the same now. And it's true, but it's very clear the deaths are not. Like there was a research done of Australia and their lockdowns, which were questionably harsher than ours. But what happened was then they went through all their surges, then all the numbers went up, and you look at places like America, and it's not quite the same, but places that didn't lock down and places that did, and the numbers are all looking pretty similar now. But what you don't have is the same deaths. And I don't know about you, Chewie, but I'm someone who kind of values life, right? And so, yes, the numbers of cases have gone up, but because countries like New Zealand and Australia were so much more restrictive, we'll just use the real accurate words, and more careful around COVID before the vaccines came. Once the vaccines have come in, the rate of death is so much more. So places that have, like America, and I think Sweden was one that basically was open all the time, they've gone like this with their death rates, and New Zealand and Australia have gone like this. And yes, they are going up, but compared to per capita and stuff, what they could have been, that's it. So let's put it this way, right? The term of Jacinda Ardern has likely saved tens of thousands of New Zealanders' lives because of what was put in place with COVID. And we're not going to play this game tonight, the bullshit pseudoscience that people out there are talking about vaccines and stuff, because it's not true. We're not going to engage in it. We're not going to play your game. We're just going to say very quickly, deaths per capita, if we had have done what Simon Bridges wanted to do. Remember, he criticized the lockdowns and he criticized the influx of tourists and stuff, and then he got ousted, because even at that stage, National Party supporters were like, dude, she's got it right. They've got it right. Yeah. So you can't really argue that this current government headed by Jacinda Ardern, who is, I think, and I talk with David Slack and you'll hear what I think there, by being chased out of office in some way by the rhetoric that's out there at the moment, and the vicious and vile rhetoric towards her. And I think that's probably a contributing factor. But the reality is, if it wasn't for her leadership, I am comfortable saying there is an unchallengeable truth that there'd be thousands and thousands, potentially tens of thousands more New Zealanders dead. So let's think about that as the legacy. You know, let's think about the kids and grandkids of those people who are here today. They wouldn't have been if we had followed along some of these, what other people think now we should have done. And I'm like, politics is politics. It was going to be at some stage. I'm surprised she's gone. I don't know what it means for the game of politics. But yeah, look, you'll hear David Slack, and I've already tweeted it. I don't know if you saw that tweet, Chewie. Should I bring it up? I'll bring up the tweet.
Yep.
This is a quote from David Slack, right? He'll tell the story, and I won't want to beat up too much on it, but he tells a story about getting a text message from someone who, there it is there, getting a text message from someone who just saw in, I think it was in Tairua, when that was on holiday, while people were on holiday. Yeah. So the Prime Minister was probably there on holiday. The person who texted David, he tells it in the story, saw in a shop someone scream at the Prime Minister, "Fuck you, you ruined my life, you cunt. Fuck off, horseface." And standing beside the Prime Minister was her 4-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
You know, so if someone can't see, if that's a singular example of stuff that's happening every single day, and you know, you hear that and you kind of go, "Fuck, I'm surprised that she bailed," but you hear that kind of stuff and you go, "Oh yeah, I can see why." So there you go, Joe. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, and to think that, you know, it's been unrelenting in some corners of the internet. You know, I've seen comments from friends of mine on Facebook saying that they've unfollowed friends that had arguments. Old school acquaintance of mine put up something that I was like, "Come on, man! Like, your business stayed afloat because of some of the decisions. So where do you get off with that?"
The National Party going on and 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 on about the debt going up under Labor, but they won't say to all the small businesses they purport to represent, the reason you're still alive is because the incumbent government borrowed to keep you alive, small business, which raised the debt. They won't have that part of the conversation. They just want to use the top line figure saying, "Man, look how the debt went up under Labor." Yeah, but why was that, Mr. Luxon? Why did it go up?
Yeah, and look, I've seen two types of reactions here, and it's, I guess, shock and you know, there's a couple of comments in the chat here that people felt gutted at this. Because they knew that this election was going to be a tough one anyway. Some people are going, "Well, you know, I guess National's got it in the bag now." I don't know if I'd go that far. I think it's going to be a lot closer than anybody probably expected even a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
And then in the more unhinged parts of the internet that I sometimes dip my feet into, absolute jubilation from some of the worst humans in the country. Racists, conspiracy theorists, the whole works. They are jubilant. Some of the comments that I saw on a non-YouTube video sharing platform: "Resignation is not enough. We want her decapitated. Plus the Minister of Health. They murdered hundreds of thousands of New Zealand people by jab. Resignation would be great if it was accompanied with her brains being splattered against a wall." You know, so
that's the difference. Like yes, all prime ministers get threats. All prime ministers, but no one's had this before.
No,
and
I think the venom, the descriptiveness, you know, and the unrelenting nature of this. You know, do you remember that video where she was visiting some town and somebody tried to pin her into a car park, the people that were following her around at school openings and harassing her? I do not blame her for going, "Do I want to sign up to another 4 years?"
Yeah, of course.
With a wee kid and a wedding that seems to get postponed after postponed after postponed. You know, I do not blame her at all.
Okay,
you know,
so
I'd love to go, "Please stay," but fuck, no one can ask that of her.
Here's the conversation for tonight. We've got 2 pre-recorded interviews. If you're a patron, you've already probably seen them because they've been uploaded on Patreon earlier this evening. If you're not a patron, well, then you can be. Patreon.com/Big Hairy News. Now, we have 2 pre-recorded interviews. One is with David Slack, who was a former speechwriter for both Geoffrey Palmer on the left and Jim Bolger on the right. So he's been in the office when these big speeches are being made. And he is now a columnist and a commentator and writes his own Substack. So I have a chat with him. Chewie hasn't seen that yet, so Chewie will probably stick around and do that. And then Chewie and I have a chat with Robert Patman. Now, I talked to David Slack about the ramifications for this probably within New Zealand, basically from a commentary point of view. And then Robert Patman is specifically around what this means internationally. I mean, if anything, like what this means internationally. We are going to get into conversations through the night that we want you to participate in if you're here live. And there are plenty of you here live tonight. I can see it. And one of the questions, and Chewie, I won't discuss it now because I talked to David Slack about it. So after we come out of the back of David Slack, we'll have a bit of a chat about who's the next leader. So if you want to get into that conversation whilst the David Slack interview is playing, feel free to put your thoughts out and why, and we'll get to it at the back of the David Slack conversation. Other than that, what I want to start with is actually I want to play the 6 minutes of her speech because many of you will have seen it on the news. You'll have seen clips and stuff, but this is a massive, massive news story. You know, whether you think good, bad, and different, whether you like Labour or National, whether you're an ACT supporter or a Green supporter, the Prime Minister, who is the only Prime Minister in the history of this country to get a majority under MMP, who is still currently the most popular candidate for Prime Minister in New Zealand. You know, yes, she's dropped off from being 60%, but she is still leading in all of the polls as preferred Prime Minister, has announced their retirement today. And I would suggest because of, I don't know this, but I talked to David Slack about this, and my example will be clear in that because of things like what I just read out about what happened to her in a shop in Taurua. So it's a huge day. So I think what we're going to just do, if you haven't seen it, it's 6 minutes, is play the full speech. We'll follow up on that, Chewie, and then pretty quickly we'll get to David Slack. We down for that?
Yeah, absolutely.
At any stage, Chewie, if you want me to stop this, I'll stop this. But this is the Prime Minister's announcement today in full. I'll make an apology. I don't know why, but all of the news agencies didn't record this in stereo. So if you're wearing headphones or something and this just comes out of your left headphone, I apologize. It's not our end, it's their end. I can't do anything about it. All the content is still there. So thanks, News Hub. I went and checked stuff and it was the same for them. It was just a left channel. I don't know what they were doing, but that's what it was. All right. So here is the announcement by the Prime Minister today.
I'm entering now my 6th year in office.
Are we not going to do this, though, love? I mean, love as in the computer, not as in the Prime Minister. What I might just do, actually, I might just do this just to give it a rebuff and then we'll get going.
I'm entering now my 6th year in office. And for each of these years, I have given my absolute all. I believe that leading a country is the most privileged job anyone could ever have, but also one of the more challenging. You cannot and should not do it unless you have a full tank, plus a bit in reserve for those unexpected challenges. This summer, I had hoped to find a way to prepare not just for another year, but another term, because that is what this year requires. I have not been able to do that. And so today I'm announcing that I will not be seeking re-election and that my term as Prime Minister will conclude no later than the 7th of February. This has been the most fulfilling 5.5 years of my life, but it has also had its challenges. Amongst an agenda focused on housing, child poverty, and climate change, we encountered a major biosecurity incursion, a domestic terror event, a major natural disaster, a global pandemic, and an economic crisis. The decisions that have had to be made have been continual and they have been weighty. But I'm not leaving because it was hard. Had that been the case, I probably would have departed 2 months into the job. I am leaving because with such a privileged role comes responsibility. The responsibility to know when you are the right person to lead and also when you are not. I know what this job takes, and I know that I no longer have enough in the tank to do it justice. It's that simple. But I absolutely believe and know there are others around me who do. We've achieved a huge amount in the last 5 years, and I'm so proud of that. We are in a fundamentally different place on climate change than where we were, with ambitious targets and a plan to achieve them. We have turned around child poverty statistics and made the most significant increases in welfare and the state housing stock that we've seen in many decades. We've made it easier to access education and training. We've improved the paying conditions of workers and shifted our settings towards a high-wage, high-skilled economy. And we've worked hard to make progress on issues around our national identity. And I believe that teaching history in schools and celebrating our own Indigenous national holiday will all make a difference for years to come. And we've done that while responding to some of the biggest threats to the health and economic well-being of our nation, arguably, since World War II. The team that has done all of that, they have been some of the best people.
Just buffering if you're listening to the audio content. Just buffering. Not sure why this buffers. We're on a 1 gig internet line here. Oh, it's just going to go turn itself off for a little bit as well. Any thoughts while it's doing this, dear Chewie?
There's some real emotion in there.
Yeah.
100%.
I've ever had the privilege of working with. And they are well placed to take us forward as we continue to focus on our economic recovery with one of the strongest economies in the world. They are also a team who are incredibly well placed to contest the next election. In fact, I'm not leaving because I believe we can't win the election, but because I believe we can and will. And we need a fresh set of shoulders.
Yeah, I apologize about this. Not sure quite why I was doing it. I guess this is the lesson that I should download and record these and play them out. Yeah, I think people are using comments like defeated and stuff in the commentary. That could be the case.
It does strike me as someone that has just been worn down, and with everything that has gone on.
Yeah,
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, it seems pretty tough. I'm just going to rebuff this. I've just changed the.
I'm entering now my 6th leaving because I believe we can't win the election, but because I believe we can and will, and we need a fresh set of shoulders for that challenge. I know there will be much discussion in the aftermath of this decision as to what the so-called real reason was. I can tell you that what I'm sharing today is it. The only interesting angle that you will find is that after going on 6 years of some big challenges, I am human. Politicians are human. We give all that we can for as long as we can, and then it's time. And for me, it's time. I intend to remain a member for Mount Albert through till April. This will give me a bit of time in the electorate before I depart and also spare them and the country a by-election. Beyond that, I have no plan, no next steps. All I know is that whatever I do, I will try and find ways to keep working for New Zealand, and that I'm looking forward to spending time with my family once again. Arguably, they're the ones that have sacrificed the most out of all of us. And so to Neve, Mum is looking forward to being there when you start school this year. And to Clark, let's finally get married. As for the next Labour leader, the caucus...
Just lucky that Clark didn't go, I don't think so, from down the back or something like that.
Caucus has 7 days to ascertain whether one individual holds more than 2/3 of the caucus support. Caucus has agreed today that a vote will occur in 3 days' time, on Sunday, the 22nd of January. If the leader is successfully elected, I will issue my resignation soon after to the Governor-General, and a new Prime Minister will be sworn in. If no one is able to garner this level of support within caucus, the leadership contest will go to the wider membership. My opportunity to thank the many people I need to will likely come in April when I depart Parliament, 15 years after having been sworn in. Till then, I see my role to help the Labour Party, who I consider to be my family, navigate this next phase, and then to leave the next colleague who takes on this role all the space they need to make their mark. For my part, I want to finish with a simple thank you to New Zealanders for giving me this opportunity to serve and to take on what has and will always be the greatest role of my life. I hope in return, I leave behind a belief that you can be kind but strong, empathetic but decisive, optimistic but focused, that you can be your own kind of leader, one that knows when it's time to go.
There you go. So there's the speech in full, and I do apologise about any of that buffering in the middle. If you're listening to the audio podcast, I apologise for that as well. So you go, Chewie. I mean, look, let me just say this as well. People in the comments, don't be cunts. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't mean to be too blunt, but don't be cunts. I mean, we don't block people on this
Might be blunt,
show.
but it's accurate.
But we don't block people on this show. I just blocked 3 people whilst the Prime Minister. Doesn't that just actually speak to the bunch of assholery that's out there? Like, we've done 200 plus shows, and I think one person's been blocked ever. The Prime Minister comes on with a resignation, like her or hate her, and I block 3 people in the space of 6.5 minutes. Don't be cunts. Fuck off. And actually, I've never said don't listen, but just don't. I mean, you're going to be gone. I don't like doing that. I don't typically do that, but some of the comments tonight just tonight, based around the Prime Minister's face being on our show, are the worst of the worst we've seen. So that actually speaks exactly to the misogyny, the bullshit, all that kind of stuff that people are saying are focused on the Prime Minister. Sorry, Chewie, go.
We've always said we'll have people in the comments may not necessarily disagree with us or take the position that we do, and that's fine. We can have a good discussion if people are on opposite sides of things or have a different take of things, but just be respectful. That's the only you can say things that are critical of the Prime Minister or critical of Labour. Certainly we have, and be respectful. That's it. That's bare minimum for society functioning, as far as I'm concerned. You can't just walk up to someone in the street and go, "I hate your face. You're a dickhead," and not get punched in the face just because you're on the internet. Just try and stick to the rules. Would someone punch me in the face for saying this? I do my best. Sometimes it doesn't work, but just have a go. And look, we would love people if we all agree with each other. It's very boring in the chat. So we don't mind having alternative points of view. That's completely, absolutely fine. Just have respect for us. Have respect for the other people in the chat.
I mean, to be honest with you, Chewie, I don't really even care if people have respect for us. And this is we put ourselves out there to do this. It's just I mean, we don't need to bang on about this. I'm just saying to you, I think we've just had evidence of the revolting nature of people out there, because we don't do this. And in the space of 1 6-minute conversation, I did it 3 times. So that's it. We're done. Anyway, right. Do you want to speak to that? Because we're going to get into David Slack's conversation shortly.
No, let's move on.
So after this conversation, we will, Chewie and I, and you're welcome to join in, have a conversation around who is there to come. I talked to David Slack about it, which is you'll hear my thoughts in this conversation. So we'll give Chewie a chance to respond to that. And if you want to have a chance to respond to that, feel free to throw it into the chat, and we'll come to some of those afterwards. And then after that, we'll go to Robert Patman as well. And we are just going to continue along, figuring out and talking about, and this could end up being the biggest news story of the year. Could be. Certainly going to be a top 5. The resignation of the Prime Minister. The resignation of a Prime Minister who is currently the most popular candidate to be Prime Minister, and is the only Prime Minister who has ever got a majority government since MMP's been around. All right, here we go. David Slack with me this afternoon, talking the resignation of the Prime Minister. Joining us right now, writer and commentator David Slack. David, good evening to you.
Hey, Pat. Long time no chat.
Yeah, I was just thinking.
COVID kept me away from you.
Yeah, how you doing? Well, I know it was a pretty rough run for you at COVID. You okay now?
Yeah, it was frustrating. I ducked it until about Labour weekend last year, and then put myself on the Paxlovid right away, and that worked pretty well. Except that then I got what about 1 in 10 people get, which is the Paxlovid rebound.
Yeah, the bounce back.
Yeah, and if that happens, it means that your immune system turns up to do the rear guard action, because the Paxlovid didn't clear it all out and doesn't quite know where the keys are and where the car is in the building. And so it all takes a while. And so I just went for week after week after week, just sort of decked, and it was pretty frustrating. And
No
still
good.
now I've got this numb tongue that kind of tells me that things aren't quite right. So
it's good
it's
that you're a writer, Danny. So when the numb gets a bit numb, it doesn't affect you that much.
true.
And just completely off target. if you
radio.
if you could go back again, because the Paxlovid is recommended for some people. If you could look back again, would you have still gone with that, or would you have taken your chances more on just the COVID?
Yeah, because I've got a sort of a heart condition. When I say that, I mean 30 years ago I had a couple of heart attacks, and so I have to be kind of careful. I'm kind of mindful that if the ball bounces wrong, it can get a bit catastrophic, and that's the whole idea of Paxlovid, that you just remove the possibility of the extreme adverse outcome from the calculation. So yeah, I'd probably do it again, but I don't know. I might actually weigh it a bit next time.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting, those decisions we make. Like I got it in December for the first time, but I just had my booster, and I kind of I flew through it pretty well. Like I was back doing the show kind of maybe 3 nights after I got it. There were some things I had exhaustion and I had spinning heads and stuff, but I was mostly okay. And I put it to, and I wonder if I hadn't had that booster, would I have? Because that means my immunity this year was like, go. But we can't tell this. But look, anyway, let's not get distracted. There's enough for you and I to get distracted about.
Today was a big day.
It was a big day. I was actually thinking, the amount that I've worked in radio when there's been massive stories, I'm like, today is one of those days.
Yeah.
And it was massive. And like, I know most people don't believe this, but the biggest news of the day was the sun was out in Dunedin. No, that wasn't. That was the second biggest news story.
Yeah.
So why don't you just, for people who don't know, you have worked as a speechwriter for Geoffrey Palmer and for Jim Bolger, so both sides of the kind of house, I guess you'd say. So I'm interested to get your intake as well. You've been behind the closed doors before, I don't know if these kinds of speeches, but some kinds of speeches have been delivered. So we'd love to get your input on what we saw today, but also you're an astute political commentator on what this means for New Zealand. The floor is yours, sir.
Sure. One interesting point she used in there was that people always, when this happens, and obviously this was sort of alluding to John Key in particular, people say, well, but what's the real reason? And she said, well, I've just told you that's the real reason. And I both accept that, but also wonder if nonetheless what she has described minimizes what went into that calculation. And by that I mean that the vitriol, the hate, the death threats, the unrelenting hostility that has developed over these last year in particular, because it was about this time last year that the occupation was getting going.
Yeah.
That has to wear on anybody. She has real steel, but she also has a great deal of humanity and empathy, and all of those things add up to finding that pretty tough. And also, you would have to be worried about your personal safety. There is a level of menace attaches to this that is really worrisome. And when you've got a young child to consider in that calculation as well, that's really meaningful. So I think when she talks about not having much left in the tank, I absolutely believe that. I thought more than once last year, looking at her, God, I couldn't blame you if you wanted to pull the pin on this. And it really has been hugely demanding.
What you're describing about the tank, as you're describing it, I'm thinking, I spend a lot of time in Northland, so understand the concept of conserving water in a tank, right? And you can use up the water in the tank for good, solid, real, wholesome purposes like showers and drinking water and that kind of stuff. Or you can get someone with a machete come and take to your tank, or with guns to blow holes in the side of your tank. That will also empty the water, but so much harder to refill out. And what you're describing is someone someone, you know, a group, a feeling has attacked that tank to empty it, as opposed to maybe natural attrition, which maybe most politicians hit at some stage.
No, that's absolutely true. And actually, I was just lining one thing up to quote to you, but I'm just going to jump to another one too that somebody shared with me today. That this, you know, this is here. This is just quoting somebody who texted me, and it might all be imagined, but the person who supplied it is extremely reliable. And if they are providing this,
Have we got a scoop? Have we? Are you giving us a scoop? Are you?
No,
My unknown source.
It's yeah, a reliable unnamed source, but he's saying that in Tairua, and I presume this was over the holidays. Doesn't really matter when it was anyway. That they saw a woman telling Jacinda, how rough are you with the language here? Shall I go full noise or shall I
go full noise?
Okay, this is what this woman said to Jacinda in a store in Tairua. Fuck you, you ruined my life, you cunt. Fuck off, horseface. This was in a local shop in front of Neve. In front of Neve. You know, yeah. It's unconscionable, the readiness of people to throw unbelievable invective at somebody who has been doing what, and I'll now go to the thing that I had lined up before that I was going to share with you that I wrote in the newsletter today, because I think that this is the essence of what I think is unfair, that essentially the people who have given this the least thought and made the most noise have kind of prevailed here. And it is, I had a character saying, I still can't get over how fast people managed to forget what was at stake and how decent a job the government did of getting us through. And then all of a sudden, every inconvenience gets made into a political travesty.
Yeah.
And you know, we seem to have managed to so swiftly forget how uncertain it was in those first few weeks. And you and I, we talked around that point about it, about just how unsure it all looked. And we didn't know, none of us knew. We didn't have a bloody clue. And the assurance of the money sustaining everybody to keep things on an even keel was hugely meaningful. The way in which they, and we talked about this before we came on air indirectly, the messaging they had couldn't have been clearer and was really helpful.
At that time, yeah.
At that time was really valuable. And it meant that the sense that everybody might have otherwise had, that there was no telling where this thing would go. And let's not forget that either. You know, we didn't know much about that virus at that point. Was it going to escalate? Was it going to start cutting people down? Were people going to die, you know, in the way they did in 1918? And so all of that, they managed so well. But in the calculation, it meant that you were choosing least bad option. And that meant that certain things were, you know, unpalatable options, and that meant not being able to come and go from this country in the way that we take for granted. But it amounted not to ruining your life, as that person was alleging in the shop in Tairua to Jacinda Ardern. It meant making things difficult so that you had to adjust, and making it possible for you to adjust. This ruining your life, ruining my life shit, I've heard many times now from people, and it is histrionic, and it's unfair, and it's certainly unreasonable to say that Jacinda did this to me.
It's also the victim card, though. And like, one of the things that frustrates me most about this whole, you know, apartheid argument around this is, if you're black in South Africa, you don't have a fucking choice. You know, you have a choice to whether you were going to be excluded from society via mandates or not. So there's no victims in this classroom, as Michelle Pfeiffer said in Dangerous Minds. There's no fucking victims in this classroom. If you want to put your opinion on dodgy science above what's being said, fine. That's the choice you make. There's no victims in this classroom. You know, so yeah, those people, you have ruined my life. It's like, I'm a victim. I had no autonomy. Yes, you did. You had all the autonomy. I had a teacher on who lost their job, and she said, I said, well, it's a choice, and she says, no, they're not. They're forcing it. So I said to her, oh, really? So when are you getting your vaccine? And she says, well, I'm not. And I'm like, because it's not a choice. Yeah, because you're choosing not to get it. So I don't buy any of that. But like I was thinking as well, what she said today, which we played the full thing earlier, it could be, it is, let's just take it as true. But is it true because she's come to the end, or is it true because those machetes have been attacking the water tank? So in other words, has this been, she's been driven to this part to have to get out? So even though it is truthful that she's leaving on her terms, if it wasn't for the histrionics in society, she probably, who knows, we know sliding doors, but wouldn't be. And it's just made me think, you know, what that means moving forward, which I'd like to actually, is there anything you want to share with us about delivering those messages? As I said, speechwriter for Palmer and Bolger, what happens behind the scenes when you have to deliver, and you may have not been involved with exactly this, but these sort of earth-shattering, news-breaking events, what happens? How is that delivered? How do you go through the process of getting the wording right and stuff? Share us something on that.
So, you know, when I think about it now, at the point that Geoffrey Palmer was leaving, he was just saying all of that himself. Nobody was scripting anything,
right?
Because actually, the calculations are all done. Then, you know, there isn't, you're not sort of setting one thing off against another. And I might be mistaken about this. And I should, full disclosure, I should say that I have been involved once or twice in this term, helping with messaging for this Prime Minister too. But only, only a little bits on a time or on one or two occasions.
I hope you weren't involved with the UN one where she said that free speech could be a weapon of war, because there was another time they screwed up their messaging. Please tell me you were involved with that, David. No. Oh, good. Good.
But you know, the impression I got from that involvement was that she has very clear ideas, as do many political orators, and it's not so much that they don't have a clear idea about messaging, it's more that they're looking for fresh ideas that might just make things shine a bit more. But they've got fundamentally they know where they're wanting to take it, and so you know, anything you heard today, I would say was a full expression of what she had been thinking and where she was taking it. And we know this about her messaging too, that she's always found a way to present it in a way that doesn't unduly blame anybody, do anybody down. It might be implicit in it, but she doesn't unduly take a swing when that's not necessary, and she also, I think, knows that people will draw their conclusions anyway. It's not, you don't need to say everything for people to get the point. And I think the truth is that it's both of those things. It is run out of tank, but it's also, as you say, somebody has taken a fucking machete to the tank so the water's come out faster. We're mixing metaphors and hydrocarbons here, but you know what I mean. It's nobody could blame her for saying at this point this would be the right thing to do. And furthermore, and she hasn't said this, but you have to figure that this was on her mind, that her presence would have been extremely divisive in this election campaign. This would have been a horrible election campaign with everybody who hates her throwing themselves at her, and possibly a very dangerous one. You know, you had an election in the UK where a candidate died, was attacked and murdered. You know, this happens in Westminster democracies. And well, sure as fuck happens now. And as we saw in Christchurch, it happens with absolutely murderous intent. So there was that danger too. But, you know, from a strategic point of view, this takes something very inflammatory out of the equation and leaves Labour to fight on. Sure, reduced kind of firepower in a certain sense. You know, she had star power like none other, but also she had become an enmity magnet. So do these, you know, where does that calculation take you? Maybe.
Well, this is exactly the next conversation that's now going to fill up the next 7 days of Talkback. Who is next? Now, News Hub has come out. I'm not picking on News Hub because that's just the headline that's come out. Michael Wood, Chris Hipkins, and Kerry Allen. I think they've got it wrong. Michael Wood, I think possibly is of those three is my top choice, but they're missing who the person should be. Now, you and I started talking about Kerry Allen beforehand. You were thinking that Kerry Allen could be a choice. Go on, give us your rationale before I make myself look like the most misogynistic, patriarchal piece of shit in the land.
By all means. What I have in mind in particular was and now I've forgotten the civil defence disaster that this actually involved. Was it
Right.
the volcano? No. Look, it's secondary. Whichever disaster it was, it ran all day, and she was suddenly there, fronting and being compelling in her reassuring and capable presence. I think that she has a means of communicating right across the spectrum of our society in a way that few politicians do. I think she's very quick. She's very sharp. She has all the humanity that the current Prime Minister does. And I also think she has the potential to present further dimension that you don't see yet when she steps up in exactly the same way that Jacinda did once she took over from Andrew Little.
Yeah.
I know you're going to disagree with a great deal of this, but I think she's got a rare quality, and that can be enough to overcome the dimension that I know you're concerned about, which is that we've got a bunch of misogynistic, conservative middle New Zealanders who will say, "No, fuck that. I'm not voting for another woman. I want a man."
Well, okay. So thanks for throwing me under the bus.
Let me throw one more thing in.
Okay, sure.
How cool would it be for Marnie Dunlop to be the first lady? That's as cool as Hillary Clinton, man.
I tell you something, and I'm just looking at it from a numbers point of view. If they want to win this year, Kerry Allen is the wrong choice for all those horrible reasons you've just said, but those are still reasons. There are a group of people who are moving away from Labour. There are some of them that are, unfortunately, that bloody woman. And if you want to win this year, not my personal position, but Kerry Allen is the wrong person, I think. Now, if you're looking at 2026 and beyond, and you are going to say, yep, we're just going to take this hit and we're going to end up on 28% and we're going to move for the next one and National's going to win, sure, fine, if that's the plan that they go with. Tell you, and I thought the two people that would be, I think Michael Wood is up there, one of they suggested. Now, as I say this out loud, I was a little bit worried that I don't think he's announced that he's going to resign. Imagine if the person I'm about to say has said he's one of those ones that are going to skip out. I don't think it is. As we look at the actual the list, I mean, you go through the list and it gets pretty. He said Kelvin Davis is no. Grant Robertson said no. Jacinda's going, and then you look at some people who have been there for a while. David Parker, Little's had a crack. Hipkins, they've touted. I don't think so. I reckon, especially if you want to get that group of people, and you see where I'm stopping and slowing down.
Oh God, are you going to Kieran McNulty because he said he won't?
I think Kieran McNulty is the guy.
Yeah, no, he has said he won't.
I think Kieran McNulty is the guy. Well, man, we'll see what happens after 7 days.
Yeah.
I reckon he pitches. Remember, I'm just talking about winning this year. He pitches to provincial New Zealand like pretty much no one else can.
Yeah,
I think that's needed in the Labour Party leadership if they want to win this year. Because be it good, bad, or indifferent, the groundswells of this world have been able to turn a sector of that society against Labour. Maybe they always were, but putting a provincial ute driving bloke in there for this year is messaging that I think would help them. So my tick is for Kieran McNulty. He's the guy. He's the guy.
He's a whole lot more quick.
No baggage.
And informed than Christopher Luxon. And that's the other thing to think about here. Once it's an election, it's not it's not a contest between whoever the new leader is and the one they've replaced.
Yep.
It's between them and Luxon.
Yeah.
How do they look against him? That's
for sure.
And so you've kind of persuaded me a little bit here, Pat.
He's the guy. Look, and look. The reason I sound people are going to say misogynist, patriarchal. You're right, but that's not because that's what I believe. That's because I'm taking a step back and looking what would be best for them to win this year, and that whether we like it or hate it plays a part. He's the guy. Now, you brought him up by name. I really would like to go just to wrap up with. I'd really like to go and get your thoughts around Mr. Luxon's tweet. For people who haven't seen it yet, on behalf of the National Party, I offer to Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern our thanks for her service to New Zealand. She has given her all to this incredibly demanding job, and I wish her and her family all the very best for the future. Thank you, Jacinda. I mean, for a start, maybe I'm being a little bit facetious about the position. Thank you, Prime Minister. Might have been better at the end, maybe, just, the office. But anyway, I think that the rhetoric that I've heard from Christopher Luxon for the past 12 months has done nothing but add to those machetes that we talked about in the thing, that away from them. That just feels a little bit more than, what's the right word? Patronizing?
It is 99% weasel. When you say weasel word, what we mean is that when a weasel gets at an egg, it sucks all the egg out of it, and all you've got left is a shell. And that's what's meant by this. The words are there, but there is nothing inside that shell. And it's meaningless because what he actually has done what he has failed to do by inaction is stop so many people who could have been discouraged from using invective that has landed us where we are. And he's all good with that, and that's not good. Not good.
Yeah, I really hope. I mean, you and I talked about this beforehand, and I've mentioned this. In fact, I've made a clip on it today talking about how shit House Labor is at their messaging. I hope that they get this right for the sake of people on the left, and they don't just, I don't know, virtue signal what they think should be, as opposed to actually stop and think, how do you win? Because that's not what the left asks very well. The right goes, how do we win? The left goes, how do we make this world a better place? Which is a great thing, but if you don't win first, you can't make the world a better place. So Labour Party, if you're listening, how do we win? And as horrible as it is to sound, maybe some of the best and brightest that might be fantastic people in 3 years from now, if you want to win this year, aren't the people to go with. Just my humble opinion.
Yeah.
That's all, David.
The cost of living right now, National Party have grasped. It really weighs on everybody's mind, and so that's why you hear so much about it. They have to find messaging for a starter that turns that around, because this is actually on the wealthy, the taking advantage of windfall profits, the taking advantage of healthy bottom lines. All of that could be changed. It would not be to the advantage of wealthy people, but it would be to the advantage of the hard-pressed Kiwi mum and dad that Christopher Luxon purports to be concerned about. So just for starters, the messaging of that, I think, could be flipped, and you need to whiteboard that for a day.
Yeah. No, look, we talked about this. We talked about this last night, and you and I talked about it before we came on. When National says we have the CEOs, the messaging from Labour is, yes, you can have the CEOs, we'll have the workers. That's actually where they need to be. They don't need to be, oh, no, the CEOs love us too. No, fuck that. The messaging is, yeah, you can have the top 10%. You can have the elites. You can have the Graham Harts giving you $250,000. We'll go see the workers on the factory floor who can't afford to give us anything, but we'll rally them, get their votes, and that's who we're fighting for. And if they don't get that right, I mean, that's the Labour of old, then they're doomed for eternity.
Actually, you scrolled past Michael Wood to get to Kieran McNulty, but he has been doing some pretty good messaging along those terms.
They're my two choices. Those are the two I came to. I was Kieran's number one, Michael's number two. And if Kieran says no, Michael's number two. But I think, honestly, especially in that provincial kind of cred, gumboot wearing youth. And look, it sounds horrible, but I understand messaging. That's what it is. He's the guy. He's the guy.
You're not wrong.
David Slack, tell the people about Subslack.
Oh, yes. Do please come and enjoy the daily newsletter called More Than a Fielding, which you can find at substack.com. I write a snappy thing that comes out at 4:30 each day that looks at what's been going on. It's a kind of a look in the rear vision mirror to see what we've hit now and what's bouncing on the road behind us, you might say. But it's mostly about life here and politics in particular. I try not to make every issue about rail and bikes. But it contains both. And also quite a lot about our absolutely dysfunctional Ponzi scheme fucking property market. But there are all kinds of things, and also there's a whole bunch of nostalgia. And on Thursdays there's the school journal, the Thursday school journal, where much of the action takes place at the fictional Kiakaha Primary School, where all kinds of cool people do interesting things.
There you go. People want to find out more about you. Substack.com. David, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I'm very glad you're, should we say, coming to the very tail end of your COVID, because we want you on again. We want to chat again. It's always fun. It's always a pleasure. Thank you for joining us.
Likewise, Pat. It's been a pleasure. Cheers, man.
There you go. So, Chewie, reactions to Mr. Slack, and then let's have a chat about leadership.
Oh, yeah. Like, David Snake's had some excellent points for decades. So, yeah, that was a really interesting chat.
Okay, that was easy. Let's get on to the let's get on to the leadership. You heard my premise, and look, I get it. I've already seen people coming back at me, come at me, bros, on Twitter saying, yeah, because what you need now is to really, fight against misogyny by getting a ute driving. I'm like, dude, I'm just about winning. Like, I'm just talking about winning. If you want to win, and there are people talking about a hospital pass. I'm pretty sure. 90% sure. Helen Clark lost in 96. She was the leader and lost, and then came back and won. So I think it probably is a bit of a hospital pass. Kieran McNulty's only been there for a few years. Maybe he'd be the right person. And look, I'm no expert. Mostly when I make predictions, I get it wrong. But I just look through the list, because we had this conversation just the other day. If not Luxon, then who? If not Ardern, then whom? We were struggling on both accounts. But the more I look at it, the more I think from a messaging point of view, to try and maybe, shall we say, stop the drip of supporters going away. There's a percentage that if you can sell that provincial, kind of person who is going to keep a few more of them in. And as we know, elections get won by 40,000 votes. I think 2017 was 41,000 votes or something like that. So holding on to 5, 10, 15,000 people because of what seems a bit gross, but something like, he's a bit more rural and not one of those latte drinking chicks, it is potentially a way to help win. It's not a way to sound nice or to make it feel like we're a enlightened society. But if we're just talking about winning, I kind of feel like one of the things with Jacinda is you can't, for want of a better word, this sounds horrible, but I think you kind of need the anti-Jacinda that's got the same kind of ideas, same kind of policies. Well, but I'm just talking about selling it to the public. That's all I'm saying. I'm not talking about, like, I'd be perfectly happy to follow Jacinda for the rest of this year into a government. But I'm saying, from the messaging, from the selling of it, I just wonder if that would help them get their end goal, which is change the world, but you need to be empowered to do that. That's all.
Here are my thoughts. I think whoever sticks their hands up needs to have the support of the party of, there's a very real chance that we're going to lose this. I want to win it. That was one of the things. I think the worst thing that could happen for the party here is they pick someone, they lose, they go, oh shit, now we're going to get a new leader, and then we go into that washing machine again. Yeah. There's some really good names being battered around, and they've all got good aspects to it. I mean, you mentioned Kieran McNulty. That's one of my favorite quotes. Yes, I'm a socialist and I'm proud of it. Yeah, there you go. Thank you very much. Bring it on. And I'm very proud to say to the good people of the Wairarapa that they have elected a proud socialist as their MP. That would make people's brains boil, and I am here for it.
That's true, actually. Unfortunately, even though I think that's great as well, there's a pretty easy messaging from the right to keep away from socialism. So that actually,
we were talking about this last night, weren't we?
Yeah.
Weren't we? The party of the worker, party of the middle and lower class. There are.
But I'm with you. But I'm with you. But what I'm seeing also in my head now, as I think about that, is the messaging from National and ACT, much like the messaging from the Republicans in America about the evils of socialism. And
Fuck them.
yeah,
Fuck
I
them.
look,
You
look,
know,
I actually
it's
agree.
like we're going, you know, if we want to talk about an economic crisis and that sort of thing, everybody that's gone more to the right has had a worse experience. There's your messaging. Ride that all the way to the election. And like, this is a time for them to try something. You
So
know,
here's the thing, yeah.
one of the criticisms that I have for the Ardern government is that they, you know, rightly or wrongly, pandered to the middle, which I can understand from a politics point of view.
No, wrongly. Yeah, wrongly. Because now they've got nothing to stand on.
People called Jacinda a communist, and I was sitting there going, when's she going to do some communism then? Because she hasn't. You know, there's been a lot of good things, but people called her things that she wasn't. And they accused her of things that she didn't do.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, they've done some real work on poverty. Have they solved it? No, because that's really hard. But we're at nearly full employment. You know, we had a housing crisis, and there's been more houses built in the last 3 years than the previous 15.
Yeah.
You know, house prices are starting to come down to the point where people are freaking out. You know, and it's like, oh, well, we don't want houses to be too expensive for people to buy it. But then the people that own houses are looking at the value going down and going, oh, shit.
Yeah.
You know, the next part of that is to people go, if you're worried about housing prices and your investment portfolio going down, don't invest in houses. It's not a game to collect as many houses as you can to become rich. If you want to invest in something, if you want to invest in something and make some money and actually improve this company, invest your money in local business. Become a shareholder in something. You know, don't make yourself rich. New Zealand is making each other rich by selling old houses to each other. It's what got us into this problem, and you can graph it out mathematically when it all went wrong.
Yeah,
you know, I think if we get National and ACT back in, we're just going to go back to that again.
I like the idea of, you know, investing in local business. So Patreon.
That was smooth.
I just realized the banner's not right though, because this is from last year.
Oh yeah, you're going to update that.
We've got a lot of people joining us tonight that maybe don't normally join us. I might as well tell you who we are and what we do. Independent media group based in Dunedin, talk politics, news of the day not every single night, Monday to Thursday at the moment. I said to someone this afternoon, I'm like, thank the good Lord that this announcement wasn't tomorrow, Chewie, or else we would have had to do another show, like a special.
Yeah.
And if you like what we do, there's two main ways you can support us. One is to be a part of what we do by being a part of Patreon. Be a patron for us. There are things there. Look, there is clips put up today. You can't see them because that is Professor Robert Patman, which you're yet to see. We're going to play that in a minute. It's already up there. And there's David Slack's already up there. And then we have other things, other bonuses and stuff will go there. But the other way you can do it is, and this is probably even more valuable, is to be our advocates, tell people about us, like the YouTube channel, share our clips. These clips will be going up separately. These two interviews, these conversations, share them around. Follow me and Chewie on Twitter. And be a part of the team. You can be a part of the team financially, or you can be a part of the team by just being our advocate. So if you've joined us for the first time tonight and gone, what the fuck is this all about? Well, this is what we're all about. We talk politics. We are unashamedly from the left. That's where we sit, but we carry water for no fucker, right? If it requires criticism, we criticize. If it requires praise, be it the right or the left, we praise. We walk and chew gum at the same time. We play each ball on its merits. And that's who we are and what we do. A genuinely independent news media outlet, as opposed to other people taking millions of dollars from private business trying to claim to be independent.
Now, the other comment that I've seen bandied around is one of the statements that Jacinda Ardern made was there would be no capital gains tax under her tenure. It's not under her tenure anymore. So are we going to see a capital?
Yeah, okay.
Are we going to see a capital gains tax?
Yeah,
come back into the election cycle.
Interesting. Got some messages that you want to get out there?
Oh, there's so many messages I've started, but they're from right throughout the evening.
I apologize.
So we'll work backwards. Capital gains tax has to happen, really has to. As much as it'll hurt initially, capital gains tax has to be implemented. Where's the other one? Now, as an opportunity to introduce capital gains tax. So there we go. Okay, chat. Who else do we like for Prime Minister and
Prime Minister? So the Labour Party's going to win, are they? You just put that out there really casually.
Well, let's put it out there. Leader and potential Prime Minister.
Right.
I made the comment of Nanaia Mahuta, just because there'd be this moment where you just hear people's heads popping, and there'd be all of those people that I referred to earlier as the worst people in the country. Their heads would explode. But she has been a really solid foreign minister.
Not in a million years.
Yeah.
Not in a million years.
But I want it to. You know, Kerry Allen was another one that I would say, in a perfect world, I'd say Grant Robertson, but he's already ruled it out, which I think is a shame, because he is phenomenal, in my opinion. Other comments as we go back. I like this one, actually, from P. Blakes. One of the problems with the current state of vitriol against pollies is the only ones who will want the job will be uncaring buffoons, aka Trump, Boris, and Morrison. Right. Really thick skin to the point of having no brains and no empathy. I think is
that's actually on my that's actually the title of my CV.
We've got a comment from Kiwi Bear. As a POM living in New Zealand, I'll always be grateful for her leadership. All of my mates back home with Boris, making up as he went along, having parties, huge death rates. She showed empathy and competence. And I mean, we've got to keep that comparison in our head. We've seen what happens when you go too right-wing and too populist, and as voting percentages go down, less people involved. So I'm going to apologize to you all right now. I am going to be unbearable right through to the election. I'm going to be, I don't know. I'll come to your house and grab your ear and walk you down against your will to a polling station and wait until you've ticked a box. Like I don't care who you vote for. Like, seriously, just fucking vote. That's all I want.
All right. We've been going for nearly an hour and 10. We've got a 10-minute conversation. It's a short one with Robert Patman because he had COVID.
Okay.
Maybe you want to pull out. Why don't you go through and pull out like the 5 or 10 best, or if I don't know if there's any super chats in there. Super chats always get read though. And pull them out, and then we'll play this Robert Patman conversation. So David Slack was more about the news today and what's happening in New Zealand and what it means. Robert Patman, he has COVID. So he gave us 10 minutes. We made it very clear. You don't have to, Robert. You know, this is not a hostage video, but he wanted to. So he gave us 10 minutes. Well, I think we got out in about 9. And we really wanted to talk to him about what this means internationally, what this means for, like, because it internationally is twofold. Yeah. There's what this means for New Zealand internationally, but there's also what this means for the international world back to New Zealand. If anything, Robert Patman is from the University of Otago. He's a specialist in international politics. So that's why we're kind of talking to him mostly about the international angle. So let's play that now, and then we'll come back. And look, I don't have to be anywhere. So we can keep going for a bit longer if you want. We can read some more comments out. If people want to join in, they can join in. But let's do the Robert Patman thing. And then when we come back, we'll have an opportunity to wrap this up and see what everyone's got to say about where we are today. So here is Professor Robert Patman from the University of Otago. Are you actually at work?
No, I'm at home. Feeling a lot better now, thanks. But COVID-19 is an unpleasant experience.
Yeah, I was going to say, Robert, it'd be mad for you to be. We've started, by the way. It'd be mad for you to be in the office. So it's good to see you in your home office. You look like a very professional, home-looking office. But thank you so much for joining us with the dreaded Rona. I appreciate you do it. We said we're going to be no more than 10 minutes. I've started my stopwatch because we tend to waffle here. We've just had a big long chat with David Slack about sort of the machinations of the day in New Zealand, but you are an expert in international politics. So really my one and only question to you, Robert, is what does the resignation of Jacinda Ardern mean internationally, both for New Zealand internationally, but also interested with the international world looking back to New Zealand?
I think it means a lot, because I think, like her or dislike her, Jacinda Ardern was a very good ambassador for this country. She was a prime minister who's seen as a young, influential leader by many countries, and I think it's fair to say that she's boosted the international reputation of this country, and also international awareness of New Zealand's ability to act, particularly after the Christchurch terror atrocity of March 2019. But also, she won a lot of international applause in relation to at least the first year of the handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. And her performance in office, and it wasn't just her alone, her government's performance, cut a welcome contrast with the responses of the likes of the UK and countries like the United States.
She so it's going to mean a lot to New Zealand how we look internationally. What about coming back the other way? I mean, like, maybe it's a weird question to ask, but the international world, what are they losing?
Well, that's an important issue that shouldn't be minimized. Jacinda Ardern skillfully navigated the triangular relationship between New Zealand, the United States, and China at a time when that relationship has been subject to intensifying a rivalry between the two superpowers. The other thing I think which is notable, as well as maintaining good relations, in fact, excellent relations with the United States, and still very constructive relationship with China. In addition, I think the Jacinda Ardern period also saw, particularly the last year or so, a strengthening relationship with Australia after some strains during the Scott Morrison period, and an excellent relationship throughout her period as leader with Canada. And of course, Canada is an important partner for New Zealand. It's often joked that Canadian diplomats and New Zealand diplomats often find themselves voting the same way in the United Nations. It's an important relationship because Canada is, like Australia, a member of the Five Eyes intelligence and sharing arrangement. So, yeah, overall, I think Jacinda Ardern has, I think, to some extent, redefined international perceptions of New Zealand. I think we in New Zealand, and many New Zealand politicians, often describe New Zealand as a small state, and the implication is not really important to anyone else other than ourselves. Actually, I believe what was striking about Jacinda Ardern's period was not just her charisma and her ability to get on with a wide range of people, which came through, and her ease of communicating in front of the camera, which is a great gift. But in addition, the fact that her leadership style meshed with an increasingly interconnected world. In other words, her leadership style was in sync with a world in which was becoming ever interconnected, in which the problems that were thrown up internationally, we've mentioned one of them, COVID-19, but also transnational terrorism. We might add climate change to the list. Many of these problems are too big for even superpowers to solve on their own, and in fact demand international solutions. So I think what Jacinda Ardern did during her period as leader has, in a sense, elevated New Zealand, and we shouldn't go overboard here, but certainly in the eyes of the United States and a number of key European states like Germany, made New Zealand, in their perceptions, something of a minor power, a country which has an important international role to play.
What attributes does the Labour Party need to look for in someone else for leadership I'm sort of thinking for the international credibility that Jacinda Ardern has? We're talking international politics. Is there something that you can put your thumb on that goes that if the next leader is going to be as influential internationally or as effective internationally, they need to and is there someone that springs to mind for you who that would be?
Well, firstly, I doubt whether foreign policy will loom large in deciding who Jacinda Ardern's successor is. I would argue, as someone who teaches international relations, that we, as a country, we underestimate the importance of the subject. After all, few countries in the world trade with more. If you take New Zealand, about 29% of our GDP is accounted for in agricultural, or mostly agricultural exports. So we actually, whether we like it or not, we have a big stake in the international environment. Our well-being depends on it, and therefore we need to be influential in an environment where our well-being is closely linked to it. Yeah, I mean, I think what would the person need, what would be handy for the person who succeeds Jacinda Ardern would be to recognise, as she did, that there's a linkage between the way we conduct ourselves domestically and the way we project ourselves to the outside world. And she quickly recognised that we needed to walk the talk on climate change to be effective internationally, that we actually had to start at home, actually seriously contemplating a subject that had been long postponed. Secondly, another issue which I think is very important, and this is a bipartisan point, I think all people in New Zealand politics, whether they be national supporters, Labour supporters, ACT supporters, would believe that New Zealand does stand internationally for human rights. I think what Jacinda Ardern also acknowledged was that our progress on, if you like, making progress on Indigenous rights in this country was important for how seriously we would be taken in standing up for human rights internationally. In other words, again, there's an interconnection between what we were doing domestically and also the sort of human rights we're projecting internationally.
Hey, Robert, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you from, I almost said your sick bed, but your COVID-ridden chair. I appreciate you giving us some time this evening. We want to keep it as short as possible whilst getting as much out of you as we can, Professor Patman. So we'll just say thanks so much for joining us tonight. We'll leave it there, and
always
as soon
a pleasure,
as you're well,
Pat. Thank you very much.
We'll have you in for a lot longer next time.
Well, I'm improving, so hopefully by the weekend I'll be out of isolation. That's bad news for the world, isn't it?
Actually, most importantly, Robert, is we wish you a speedy recovery. All right, all the best.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, mate.
There we go. Interesting comment here. Living in Japan, where all politicians are males with no heart and at the average age of 70 plus, I've never been prouder to be a Kiwi while Jacinda was leading. And I think that that has been echoed by several people in the chat. Any thoughts, Chewie?
Yeah, look, I think his comments about New Zealand's perception overseas and the need to, like, if we're going to push for things overseas, that we need to be shown to be doing the same things at home. I think that's really important. And I think it's something that I've seen creeping in a bit. Like, we love to think that New Zealand punches above its weight, right?
Oh, we're a stocky little country. We're a stocky little country that punches above its weight.
Scrappy, can-do people that just... A guy that's been training by running to his letterbox and his jandals wins the 4-minute mile or something. I don't know. It's sports. But, those sporting analogies of like, we're a little country that can do big things. And I see so many comments more along the lines of, we're little and we don't matter. I want to see the brave New Zealand that does try to swing for the fences and do these great big things. I want to see that aspirational part of it come through. And I think, I mean, I've seen a whole bunch of people commenting today of like, we've talked about this before. Politicians are all the same. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I think if anything, the last 4, 5, 6 years have shown us is that we would be looking at a dramatically different country just for the last 4 years if we had someone else or a different party at the wheel.
I think
just something to think of.
I think they have someone else, because even though we have a system where cabinet decides, there's no question that where the Prime Minister goes, the cabinet follows. And that's something to think about coming up to the 2023 election. I know that people say we vote for a party, not a Prime Minister. Technically, that's correct. But in practice, we vote for the person who is leading that party. And Chewie, just so you know, so you're looking at me strange. The reason I started laughing while you were talking was you used a sporting analogy. And I
tried. I
dumbfounded.
really tried.
You did. You said
did my
swing for the
best.
I'm so proud of you.
And I tried to remember the name of a running race. I could have gone for the America's Cup. Yeah, look, this is going to be a really interesting 6 months or so, isn't it?
What I'm interested in, right, purely from a will this help them or hurt them, is possibly the next 6 weeks as well, meaning Labour. Because, look, I don't think the vitriol towards Jacinda Ardern is warranted, obviously, and I honestly think that anyone with an ounce of sense wouldn't think that as well. Yep, we can be frustrated with our leaders. Yep, we can think decisions have been made that are bad. Yep, we can disagree with perspectives, all of that kind of stuff. But the level of vitriol, what is it? You ruined my life, you cunt. Like that level of
in front of her child.
In front of her child. It's not just unnecessary, it's just plain wrong. And that was probably, we didn't get the full story from David, but that was probably whilst Jacinda was on holiday, and we have a Prime Minister who ducked into a shop in Tairua, and whilst this person who is probably the highest profile New Zealander, perhaps certainly one of the top 10 in the world, was on holiday, they ducked into a shop like a normal person. And when they ducked into a shop like a normal person, fuck you, you ruined my life, you horse-faced bitch, or whatever was said. Yeah. I don't care who you are and what you do and what you agree with. The amount that we despise on many levels the actions of David Seymour, the amount we will talk to him to his face and call out his racist bullshit, which we have done, at no point would I ever endorse or encourage or support someone using that equivalent vile, revolting language towards him. It's just not okay. And this is the thing. I'll tell you a story. I remember being at the rugby at Eden Park with a mate of mine who was an opera singer. That was his job, his trained profession. And Mike King walked past, and Mike King was doing the crowd work at the rugby. And my mate, who's an opera singer, was like, "You suck, Mike King. You're not funny. I hate you. You suck." And I just thought for the first time, could you imagine someone standing up in the opera and doing that to you? And then I thought about it. Could you imagine someone doing that to a fucking teacher or something? Because that's basically what people have done to the Prime Minister. And look, I'm not saying it's only this Prime Minister, but it's certainly more significant, serious, and revolting with this Prime Minister. I'm not saying others are.
It's really easy to tell a politician what you think about them. Don't vote for them.
Yeah,
but vote for the other team.
Change the channel. Don't vote for them. Whatever it is.
If you're just going to spew out hate on Facebook or whatever, you're not accomplishing anything.
Yeah. I would say that the way to get your views across, and this might sound a little bit idealistic, is get involved, get policies changed, elect who you want to elect. There's no reason, and I think it was the Prime Minister's electorate office, did it have a pickaxe driven through the door in one night last year?
Yep.
I mean, John Key, same thing. There's no reason to have any kind of violence towards these people, because this is the thing, yeah, and this is where people aren't going to necessarily agree if you're that far down the spectrum. Multiple spectrums I'm thinking of as well, by the way, is that no matter what we think of their positions, I do not believe that people get into this political game to be evil and fuck people's lives over. I think I can say it publicly about David Seymour. I disagree with probably 99% of his policy, but I actually believe he thinks they're the best policies. Right, I think that. Now, yes, you do get grifters. I'm not saying he's one, or you do get people who are just like doing it for the money only or whatever. But I think most, if not all, of our politicians are doing what they believe, even if you disagree. And even if they're wrong, they're still doing what they believe. And if someone's wrong, that also doesn't, that shouldn't end up with a pickaxe through the front door of an office. So I don't know. So it's, for me, like I said, the next 6 weeks, it will be interesting to see, because no matter love or hate or feel meh about the Prime Minister, there was baggage that came from the last 12 months. And it will be interesting to see the next polls, who they've got, and what it will do for the National Party. And I'll say it again. In my opinion, Kieran McNulty is the guy. Now, he's the guy because I think he can reach that provincial audience more than anybody else, which is where a lot of this discontent is coming from. But he's also the guy because if it doesn't work out, maybe some of these other names you're hearing about who are apparently better qualified than him, and I don't agree with that, but apparently could then take over. Or if it works, he can keep trucking. He's my guy.
So here's another thing about Kieran, right? And I'm not sure how many people know about this. Have you seen his electric vehicle?
Oh, the red ute?
Yeah, the old ass beaten up red farm ute.
I got a photo. I've literally got a photo of it right here because he was on our thumbnail.
I love this because literally every other MP that you see has a flash late model sign written car. There's Kieran McNulty's ute, and I believe if you contact his electorate office, they'll lend it to you so you can move houses. But yeah, like that counts for something. Sure, it'll be great if it was an EV, but I think the fact that it's not just a flash SUV or something like that counts for something for me.
Yeah. All right, now listen, let's wrap up. But before we do, I haven't been keeping an eye on the chat. I apologize if that's a bad thing. Chewie, you do it better than me. Is there anything you want to bring up before we say goodnight to the good folks?
Some very good advice from Free Soul here.
Yep.
I'm staying off Facebook for the next few days. I think honestly that's not a silly plan. A couple of chats from earlier in the night. I kind of feel like Jacinda's been bullied out by anti-vax losers.
What did you think of my example to David Slack about the water tank? It's like
I thought it was a good analogy.
Her reservoir is emptied, but it's not empty through natural attrition. It's been emptied because people have been attacking that reservoir with machetes and various other implements, causing the reservoir damage, and now it's very difficult to refill. I was thinking this afternoon as well. Remember when Obama finally finished up after his 8 years, and he turned in he turned from this lively African American guy to like someone who looks like the commentator in Tales from the Crypt over an 8 year period.
Yeah,
and then like within 6 or 8 weeks of him leaving the office, there was this photo of him all over the world of him jet skiing in Hawaii, and he was just like, "Oh, I'm so happy." It's like, yeah, I wonder if there's going to be a vibe of that for the Prime Minister as well.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know if I agree with this comment from Simple Reality. I think it's a calculated move to help Labor win the next election. Internal Labor polling won't be good, and all this is tied to Jacinda and Grant. By them leaving it allows a new, I guess, person to come out. There would have been another comment that I didn't start. Would have let someone new come forward.
I think it's the chicken and egg thing. Yeah. She's either leaving because her polling's bad, right? And that's a bad thing. But I guess what I was trying to say, and I tried to say it today, I didn't come out very clearly. It's like either this is a part of the political process, or the attacks on the reservoir have painted a picture that have impacted the polls, which is why she's leaving. So it's either anyway. Maybe
we're just massively overthinking this. You go away on your Christmas, summer holidays, right? And it's great, and you're having a good time, and this is how life should be. And then you just go back to work, and you're like, "Oh, I hate this." Yeah,
I forgot my password.
I forgot my password, so I'm going home. Look, we'll be commenting on this heaps.
Yeah,
this has been a great show, guys. I've appreciated like 90% of the chats and the people in the chat. Like the band hammer was in effect tonight, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of anecdotal evidence that echoes this idea about what happens on the internet to female
Really
leaders,
brought out the
female
prince.
characters, because we don't ban people. But tonight, when people have been invoking various historical events and using various language and names, it's so fascinating that we've done over 200 shows. I think one person's been banned. That person got banned because they tried to say that the mosque attack was a false flag. And I'm like, yeah, you're gone. Other than that, I don't think we've put a few people in timeout from time to time. I don't think we've banned anyone else. Tonight, I think I did another one. So I think 4 people banned in one night. So it just goes to show that who comes out of the woodwork with this topic about this person. And maybe we can wrap up here by saying, I imagine that's a fairly large contributing factor towards why this person has gone, my paraphrase now, fuck you all. I'm going to go enjoy my family.
Yep. That's
all
a
right.
good place to leave it.
A reminder for those of you who are regular viewers of this, we are Monday to Thursday now, 9 p.m. Now, we will do Friday shows if and when the need arises, long form interviews, or like, let's say a current Prime Minister had announced this on Friday afternoon rather than Thursday. Thanks, Jacinda. I imagine we'll be available to come in and out on Fridays when necessary. However, we are Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m., which means unless Luxon resigns tomorrow. Oh, I was going to say that to you, Chewie. You were the one that were predicting Luxon would go before the election. Maybe you just had your number 8 ball upside down. Maybe that's what it was. Maybe that's what it was.
Maybe it's
your
still to come.
Maybe your globe was. Maybe what is your globe, your orb of the future. You were seeing the reflection in a mirror, so you saw the reverse of what you thought would happen. Maybe that's what it was.
No, I refute that.
So as of right now, we don't have a long form interview this week. So we'll be back Monday night from 9 p.m. Have you started one more you want to share with us, Chewie?
Yes, just because we like putting up a comment from the new people. Paul. Now we've got 2 Pauls.
Oh, he's the other one.
This is the other one. First time watching after a lot of people have recommended it to me. I can see why.
Nice.
Great show. Glad I was sent this way. And we are glad to have you.
Yep. Well, as we said, not to beat a dead horse, way that people can support us, there is a Patreon, patreon.com /Big Hairy News. But even maybe more importantly, be our advocates. Much like Paul was just saying there, tell people about us. Share the clips with them. That Professor Patman clip will be up probably within half an hour because we've already got the clip, as will the David Slack conversation. Share them with people, point them back to us as we hopefully continue to grow this through this year. That's what we're about. So if there's nothing else, thank you, Time to Fly. Thank you, everyone, for the words tonight. And look, also, interesting to see the response when I said Kieran McNulty. There's quite a few people who are like, oh, yeah, I can see that. I can see that. I thought that, but even David Slack was like, oh, you've sold me. It's like, oh, okay. Maybe it's not such a wild idea.
We need to get him on the show before he's Prime Minister.
Yeah, actually, it's a good point. Maybe he can be a long form interview tomorrow night, Chewie, and we'll be back here.
So we just get him in and go, hey, look, we took a straw poll and you're the guy.
Just so you know, speaking of people getting on, I emailed the Prime Minister's office today at 1:25 while I was in that meeting, requesting a conversation either today or tomorrow. At 1:56. Hi, Pat. Thanks for the request, but we'll decline on this occasion. So obviously they had the team at the computer like this, waiting for the influx. And so 20 minutes later, thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah.
So we want you to help us advocates grow so that next time this happens, they won't say no. They'll go, oh shit, we better get on there because, half of New Zealand's watching. All right. We're done, team. Thank you so much. We will be back again Monday night, 9 p.m. for the next week's editions of Big Hairy News. It's been a blast, and we will see you when we see you. Hooroo.